Tuesday night. And tonight is an interesting one. My brother's sitting next to me this evening for the first time in a long time.
We're brothers.
Because this is a sibling show tonight. So we're going to be talking to two of our favorite sisters. You guys are in for a good one. Stay tuned. It's YLTV.
Young lion, everywhere I look, they dying. Everywhere I look, they dying. Young lion, everywhere I look, they dying. Everywhere I look, they dying. Young lion, won't you get up and stop fighting? Everywhere I look, they're hiding.
That's right. We're here at True Sound Studios in Camden, New Jersey, and it is Tuesday night once again. So you're watching the live stream where we're going to have another crazy conversation where we just say whatever we feel like talking about. This evening we got some special guests in the building, and we're just gonna get the ball rolling. So first I gotta introduce my brother that everyone knows is Jake Evans Jr.
Not your brother from another mother?
No, my brother from the same mother.
And the same father.
Yeah, same mother, same father. And of course we got Simone Chang in the building.
Hello.
He's a brother from another
And
mother.
he's rocking some new merch today.
Bam.
And we'll get to that in a second. And holding it down on the production tip, of course, is Miss Rachel Rota.
What's up, Internet Land?
And so, without further ado, I want to introduce the guest this evening. Is two sisters that we've come to know from doing shows. We met them at a random gig that we did one day in our stories and all the things that we believe in, and they have a crazy story. So we're gonna get to know them a little bit better. There's some things that we never talked about, so we're gonna ask some interesting questions. So I want to introduce everybody to Joy and Peace Ike. And they are the Ike sisters. That's what we call them, the Ike sisters. But that's not what they go by. They go by Joy and Peace. Jokes about that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't think I didn't have friends until high school, college.
You didn't have friends until high school?
Yeah, people found ways to make fun of our names and everything else. But
how is that possible?
I love my name, but I didn't
of
know
course.
much. Yeah.
So did you not have friends?
I had a hard time in school. I think what she means to say is we had a really hard time growing up.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a couple friends, but we were not popular by any stretch of the imagination. And
Pittsburgh, PA.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh.
We've been there many times.
Yes.
Get up on the mics for us a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. when you talk.
Hello, world.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Let everyone hear the sultriness. Because otherwise, they're just hearing. This room is so ambient, and it's like you just hear room noise if you don't get up.
Hello, world.
There you go. That's what you want to hear. That's what we want to hear.
Yeah.
So cute.
So
they just did it again. Let's not do it this time. Okay.
So
That's great.
Growing up. So me and Jake, I know we grew up. We're very close in age, as you guys are too. But we did everything together from day one. Was it?
Different personalities, I would say, but we had the same life.
It's like us.
Yeah.
It's like us.
Yeah.
Did you guys not want to do things together at times, or was it just like?
I think when we were younger, we were too young to really know what we liked,
exactly.
like our different identities. So just by default, we did things together.
Right.
But I would say probably middle school, high school, more high school was when we started realizing that we were very different and started finding our own group of friends, our own circle.
Right.
So yeah.
It's kind of like us, but then it's funny because our music then.
I'll let her answer first.
Well, we took, our parents made us take piano lessons as kids.
They were those type of they forced you into
we were
the
forced
discipline
to
of
take
music.
piano lessons, the discipline of music.
Yeah.
So I personally never fell in love with music until my college years when I started listening to a lot of singer-songwriters and just falling in love with how I'm always intrigued by how an artist can, talk about something that every other artist who loves music, and that's why I make music, and that's what kind of gave me that push to get back into it because I love songwriting and I love storytelling. So it was definitely a long road from loathing music and really maybe loathing the discipline of music, and then getting back to the place of really loving music and how it kind of pulls at the heart and helps you to kind of access things in your life that you might not be able to otherwise.
Doesn't that say something about life though? Like those disciplines that you love, the discipline phase, and go right to the I can do everything. You know,
Yeah,
It doesn't work that way.
of us singing "It's So Hard to Say Goodbye," and my dad's like standing over us, like y'all better not mess this up. And it was just like I just had flashbacks to when my dad used to beat like just ear training into us as kids, like when we first started the group. Wrong notes. Well, that too.
Joe Jackson.
No,
Wasn't that bad?
no, but he was very like he definitely instilled in us like the discipline of okay, this is not a joke. Like if you want
Yeah, you
to,
sure
Yeah.
did.
if you want to know how to harmonize, if you want to know how to be a group, you know, you're gonna learn how to sing together. That's what you learn how to sing. Chord change. You're gonna know all the modes vocally, singing them. He used to make us sing through all the modes every day.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Wow,
Like,
that's serious.
yeah, he was insane. He was insane.
Wow.
But it's that stuff that allows you to now have fun with
Yeah,
it and hear things that you wouldn't have heard before, right? And experiment and play around and that's what it's all about. I think people miss out on that when with like just learning and wanting to like dig into music. And he saw that in me, so he would take my little lessons that I had and he would like ramp them up to the next level and force me to learn jazz and stuff like that. So
Wow.
yeah.
Yep.
So
Identify. Our dad was actually the one who she supported it, but she was never the one who like pushed for it. It was always my dad. It's always
your dad
been
a
my
musician?
dad. My dad's a wannabe musician.
Okay.
Yeah. He sorry, Dad, if you're watching. I'm sorry.
just called you out. Wanna be.
My dad is someone who has always wanted to be good at music, and God bless him. You know, he has a good voice. He has a pretty good voice, but really where it came from.
And you think maybe because he realized he never had that discipline
Oh, yeah.
foundation to like start early, so he said, I'm gonna teach. Yeah.
Excuse me, totally. That's it, and that's very typical of like we're children of immigrants.
Okay.
So our parents came over in the 70s, and you know, if you have ever talked to anyone who's a child of an immigrant, you'll know that their parents came over for opportunity, you know, to make the most of it, to give their children.
They wanted what's best for you.
Yeah.
They said we made this sacrifice to come here
Yeah.
and seize this opportunity, so we're gonna make sure y'all benefit from
Yeah,
that one.
exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. That's been my experience with most children of immigrants, and like my wife is an immigrant, so like that's my experience with those type of mentalities. It's like when they come from some opportunities, it's like
Yes.
no, I think some people don't. When you don't see it that way, you don't
Right.
live it out that way.
Yeah.
You know what I
You got
mean?
it. You got it.
Just like
It's all
Simone, you know, Simone's
perspective.
mom, Simone's family, the way they came over
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
You know?
yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
I'm
100%.
an immigrant myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Refugee.
Refugee, yeah. Yeah. But
Yeah. So, what were we talking about before? We were talking about all of this. No, we were talking about all of this amazing stuff before we could get the stream going, and we need to get back on
Jake
some
was,
of that
Jake
stuff.
was flowing.
Everybody was flowing.
I mean, it really was flowing.
I think we were talking. Well, I definitely want to talk about more about like your life growing up as children of immigrants. We have as much
We can
time-
be here
Listen,
all night if you
we
want.
have as much time as y'all are willing to sit here and talk to our crazy
We
self.
got all the time in the world.
We do.
Where were your parents from?
Nigeria.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I assumed everyone knew that.
I knew that.
Yeah, but
mean,
everyone else don't know that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's why I asked.
Before we get into that, I want to say what's up to everybody that's watching right now. What's up, Lily, Laura, Dave's watching, Sally's watching again, Mike Bateman. What's up, guys? Appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you share this and give it a thumbs up, and make sure that people see that this is happening, so that we can get more eyes on it. But yeah, so let's go back to that. So you guys, your parents came here from Nigeria in the 70s. Growing up as children from parents from Nigeria, what did you see that was maybe different from other kids? Like what was your experience like that you saw? I love the little.
We have to look at each other like,
no,
because
but
we
I
both
love
have
the little like not saying anything communication. It's just like
That's
We do that a
that's a
lot.
sibling thing.
yeah.
True. Man, oh man. I mean, where to even start? You know, I think from the get-go, when our parents came here and us growing up, the motto was always make something of yourself.
Right.
Be different than the status quo.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was always this underlying separation that we felt, I think, from a lot of culture. And this is both sides, whether it was white American culture
Right.
and black American culture.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think Joy will identify with the strong identity crisis that we grew up in for several years. Even in my late 20s and now in my mid 30s, you know, I'm just finally getting free of it all. But it's a lot of confusion.
Yeah.
Because, you know, on one hand, you know, we know, well, we're not white, we're not like the white kids, but it's very clear we're not like the black kids.
Right.
And everything we're being taught at home is, we want you to be different than the inner city. We want you to make something of yourselves. And unfortunately, we grew up in Pittsburgh. And as much as we know that there are well-to-do, well-off, educated black families, successful families, we didn't see a lot of that in
Right,
Pittsburgh.
right.
Pittsburgh is not very diverse.
Yeah.
So what we saw in Pittsburgh was like well-off white families and an inner-city poverty black families. So that kind of left us in the middle. And so even in our school and our upbringing, those kids, the message was like, don't associate. So, and we were never really accepted on the other side. So when we say we didn't have friends in school, we really didn't have friends in school.
And you think it was mostly because you couldn't identify with the cultures that you were.
Certainly. And we got teased a lot. The black kids were very, very mean to us because, you know, we talked a certain way, we
Right.
dressed a certain way, and
Yeah.
it was just very hard to find where we fit in.
Right.
Yeah. And I think too.
Sounds like James' story.
Yeah. This dude is identical.
His brother-in-law.
Yeah,
wow.
my wife's whole family, like they grew up the same way. You know, they're from Trinidad, so like they came here and they totally didn't get black culture at all.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
they grew up in like the bush. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Noise for the shoes they're wearing, and it was like, what are
Absolutely.
you? I don't get that at
It's
all.
just-
You know, so
Yeah.
That's exactly what I
Yeah.
was going to say. It's like I think my parents, you know, they were just doing what they knew, what they had to do the way they knew how to do it. And so it's funny, like looking at, we have two kid brothers who were adopted about 8 years ago. And it's funny seeing them being raised in the same way that we were raised, and, you know, having these conversations with our parents, like, Mom, they can't wear those pants. Like, they can't do it. You just can't. Because, I mean, if it was hard for us, you know, then,
Right.
but even more so for kids now. And I think of all the things that my parents didn't know, but they were doing the best that they could.
Right.
And so I just have so many memories of elementary school, middle school, and even high school too, just being very difficult in navigating and trying to figure out where I fit in, who I fit in, and how to fit in.
Right.
Just never knowing, never figuring it out.
That's interesting. I think we've all struggled with that growing up in this country in that sense, because it's like, even for us being mixed, you know, like you don't have a group to just identify with. And people are always, when you come in not being one of them, you're expected to
Yes.
find your own way.
Yes.
And I think, but in a sense, it builds a character in you that allows you to be more of a free thinker.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I
yes.
think, in a sense, like your parents set you up for life in ways
Yeah.
that you didn't know. You know what I
You're
mean?
right about
So
that.
good. Yeah, I think about, you know, I go into situations, I usually find myself, you know, being down the middle, you know, and I'm thinking about, okay, what does this person think, and what does that person think, or what is this people group or group of whatever, you know, how are they viewing the world, and more importantly, why are they viewing it that way?
Right.
And then how can I find myself taking this role a lot in music. Maybe I gave it to myself, but like thinking of how to best be an interpreter, you know, so that people.
I kind of got that sense from you, like the way you operate. But I feel like a lot of us kind of take that role on too, where it's like, all right, because of the way we grew up, because we didn't always fit in, so now you're forced to kind of like see other people's different sides of the ball, and then say, all right, how can we bridge this together so we can all, because I know in our neighborhood, like it was all different races growing up, and we had to find ways to get everyone to play together, or else we couldn't play. So it was like
We were the
It
guys
always
that-
ended up being us in control of everything
I'm
because it was
telling
like
you what.
we had to figure it out. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That's funny.
It's crazy though. I mean, you just said it perfectly. You know, so much of the life that I guess have created for myself, or the life that has kind of fallen into my lap, is directly a result of my upbringing. And so now, like, everything I do is so centered around diversity. Every social
This wonderful like thing that you've set up that we were able to be a part of, which was dope. Like it's one of the best shows that we've done in the area, which was really cool. Yeah, there it is right there. Hey,
Check it out, check it out.
Yeah, check it out. So tell people what this is and where this concept came from, because it's pretty awesome. Like,
Man, the gathering place. It's such a story, and we really would be here all night. We have so many other things to talk about, but I would just say that like the gathering place was a God-inspired movement, and I actually have to give my sister a lot of credit because my sister has always been a hospitable person. Like hospitality is her middle name. So I want to say like back when we were in Pittsburgh, you know, she would always like have people over, cook for them, and then maybe it would turn into a jam session or something.
Okay.
So like really that was really I think what sparked the interest in me to begin to do these things. I mean, even when she joined me and moved to Philly, because I've been here for about 10 years, she's been here for only about 5 years.
oh, so you moved here first?
I moved here first. And then when she moved here, we lived together for a little while, and we were doing this hosting thing where we'd have people over, we'd do house concerts, we'd just have friends over. And then about 2 years ago, we decided to split ways, and she got a house and I bought a house. And I think I just realized I had a love for it. I just have a love for bringing people together. I have a love for sharing experiences with people I love and for creating environments that are safe for everyone and fun and just where people feel loved and welcomed. So the gathering place really just birthed out of like, how can I do that? How can I make that happen and in my own home? You know, for me, home is not home unless I'm sharing it with people.
Right.
You know, that's
Right.
really my whole reason for buying a house was so I could bring people in.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And so this one thing turned to another. People started coming over. They bring their instruments. They'd plan for 1 hour. They'd be there 5 hours later.
Yeah.
And they started saying, you know what? This place is so warm and welcoming. You should call it the gathering place. And I did not take it seriously for a minute. And finally, I was like, you know, I'm going to look into this name and see if it's available. So I checked it out. I licensed it because it was available. The website, gatheringplacephilly.com, was available.
Remember from being there was just, like you were saying, the diversity of people. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, oh, this is a black crowd, or oh, this is a white crowd, or it was just like people, and and the vibe was so everyone was just there to have a good time. You know, you could really feel a sense of like enjoyment from people, and there was nothing, no like. You know how you get
Weird feeling.
weird
Yeah.
drama, no weird vibes.
You looking at me, bro?
Yeah,
No, you looking at me, bro.
Yeah.
None of that.
Yeah, I mean, I know you know, like with performing, there's always this, like when you come into a room, you have to kind of assess the atmosphere, and then you got to fight that atmosphere, and
Yes.
you know, bring it back into alignment with what God's trying to do through you.
Yeah.
and it's sometimes it can be annoying, you know.
Yeah, spot on. It took me probably about 5 to 7 years to realize that. So I've never really considered myself a musician, but more a storyteller through music.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a long time to kind of assess and kind of determine what it was that made a show work and made a show not work for me. And I realized it had everything to do with how I felt when I walked into a space.
Mm-hmm.
If I felt welcomed by the people who were the hosts, whether it was a traditional club venue or whether it was someone's home, intentionally part of the evening, or is it so that people are kind of doing their own thing?
Yeah.
Not really
Engaged with you,
and engaged. And it ended up being me understanding really the difference between engagement and entertainment, and understanding that there is a huge distinction. And a lot of times, we, especially here in America, we want an entertainment so much, or we think that's what we want, until we experience engagement.
Right.
And then we realize that entertainment is almost like a counterfeit.
Yeah.
It only fills a void for so long. But we all really want connection. And I think places like the Gathering Place and spaces that encourage that and grow that and enhance that are the places where people can really not just connect with the performer, but with each other and feel like they're really at home.
Right.
And most importantly, really known and really loved.
And I think it makes it a better experience to connect with the purpose of the music as well, because I feel like we've gotten into this place where it's like music is just like a side note to the giant show that is a concert, you know what I mean, where it's just like it's all about the lights and the colors and the fashion and the dancers
And the little
and
sprinkles.
whatever comes out of the ceiling, and it's like
Also known as
instruments. And like there is moments where you can have like these giant shows and like you can feel the energy, you can feel the spirit, but it's like for the most part people are more caught up in the
moment.
The excitement.
the excitement of it, or just the
entertainment,
the trendiness of it, like what who this person is that I'm in the room with, and like
It's the hype. Caught
yeah,
up in
the hype. That is the word. Thank you, Rach. Yeah, and I think when that happens, you lose the connection to. I mean, but a lot of times with the music that is conducive to those type of shows, there's really not much to connect with anyway.
so true.
You know what I mean? So they have to add all these other elements.
that's really good.
So true.
Yeah.
There's a lot of noise out there.
Right. All those people there, from the moment we said anything, like the moment we like, those people like were ready. They were ready to like just like receive whatever it was we were gonna give them, and the entire show was just like that, and you could feel the spirit in there, and it was a great vibe.
Wow.
Yeah, but there's definitely a lot to say about entertainment.
Right.
We
Yes,
we
there was a
definitely
shift.
used to be.
Yeah,
So
because we didn't know any better.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
You kind of you get swept up in that hype, and you feel like you need to be a part of it. You know.
Yeah.
Totally.
yeah,
Totally.
And I think there's a place for everything, like a time and a place.
Yeah.
But I think at some point, we realize that the entertainment, it's kind of like happiness, which is so fleeting. It's a
Right.
temporary thing, and while it may fill that void temporarily, what happens when you leave the concert, and what you entered into that space with, you're still leaving that space with.
yeah.
Yeah.
Engagement does something
Right.
completely different and completely other.
Someone can think something is a great like I always see people. Oh, so how do you think I did? Did I do good? They're waiting to feel happy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And if one person says one bad thing, they're not happy.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Getting their validation from the
right,
audience.
and like she
Absolutely.
said, happiness is fleeting,
Yeah.
but joy is a different perspective.
Yeah. You can't. No one
Right,
can
Joe?
take that. So funny.
Right.
So funny. Yeah, I learned that a very hard way. When I moved to Philly, I was coming with full intention to like pursue my singer-songwriter career. And I had a band, and we were called the Peace Project, and I thought we were so cool. Our name was so unique, so catchy.
Yeah. That is
and
catchy.
I did pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good. And we had like a monthly residency at Chris's Jazz Cafe.
Oh, nice.
And, I mean, we were just like doing our thing, and then I experienced a vocal injury. I lost my singing voice, and I had to have surgery in 2013.
Wow.
And so I had surgery. They had to cut off some polyps that had grown on both sides of my vocal cords, and then I had a hemorrhage. I had hemorrhaged out of one of my blood vessels, and they had to seal that up. So it was like massive work.
Wow.
And after surgery, I lost my singing voice for a very long time, and it was supposed to be back to singing in 4 months, but I didn't get my voice back for 2 years because of complications.
Wow.
And I was devastated.
I know that's got to be
I
devastating.
was devastated.
Yeah.
I could good because, he allowed me to go through that because I realized I had put my identity in my voice. And what I was even providing at that time was just entertainment. I was like, oh, I'm a good singer. People like coming to my shows. My band's really good. I wasn't singing about anything. I'll be honest. Like, my songs were just like for fun. And I feel like God just kind of like, okay, we're going to put a stop to that so you can figure out who you really are, what I created you to do. And I went through this whole journey of like discovering who I was and what I was meant to do. And it was crazy because 2 years later, after going on this journey and really getting like revelation into who I was, I got my voice back.
Wow.
And not only did I get my voice back, it came back stronger. It came back different, and I had new purpose in it. So now when I sing and when I use my voice, it's not just to add to the noise,
Right.
but it's like, oh, I know
Or to
this.
show off, right?
Yes, no, exactly.
We've all been there where it's like,
Yes.
look what I can do. We talk
Yes.
about that all the time. Like
Right?
when we go to shows and the singer is just doing "Look what I can do," it's like,
not.
it's like,
Because
nah.
look what you can't do when
right,
you lose it.
Right,
And you
exactly.
lose it just like that.
exactly.
So,
exactly.
yeah.
They did what they were comfortable with, and then once you took them out of that comfort zone, they're like,
Yeah.
you know. And I would try to get them comfortable and like, listen, you don't have to show me that you know.
Right.
All you got to do is do what I tell you to do. So there's no like, you're putting a burden on yourself by feeling like you have to
Yeah.
prove yourself, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people couldn't get past that. They were caught up in that identity of like, well, this is who I am. So if I'm not doing it the way, then maybe I shouldn't even be doing it.
If I can't perform these little tasks you're giving me, then that means that I'm not as good as I think I am. So then, therefore, I am now insecure,
Right.
and then and it becomes this whole head dynamic. That
Yeah.
Excuses
yeah.
to why you're not coming with with
Right,
Jake anymore.
right. Then it would always be like, oh yeah, I can't do vocal lessons.
can't
Yeah.
even teach me.
I know.
There's a lot of psychology, you know what I mean? A lot of people don't. It's funny, they didn't know their own voice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they didn't get in touch with their own
Yes.
voice,
Yeah.
which is crazy. And the only reason why I know that is because I had to do that myself. You know?
Yeah.
That's
You
good.
got it.
That's good.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know this, but when we first started out, Jake did not really sing lead vocal at all. Like he was very much in the background and very much like
Yeah,
okay
well-
with that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, we had five. Like we were a 5-man a cappella like R&B group, and yeah, I was singing backgrounds, and I remember there was this one time I'm like, I want to sing lead, right? So I got all in my feelings, and I'm like,
I remember it was at rehearsal.
yeah, we were at rehearsal. I'm like, guys, I want to sing lead, and then the two guys that aren't in the group anymore, they're like looking like that, and then my brother's like, you know, he's gonna be real with me. He's like,
Yeah.
dude, if you want to sing, then you need to work on it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, F you. Like, I'm mad.
He was hot in the moment. He was hot in the moment.
But, you know, you got to humble yourself. That was an opportunity right there. And if I would have just passed over that, I would have never got any better.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally.
And yeah.
And that was something from me coming from a place where I knew how much I had worked
Yeah.
to try to
Right.
be a better singer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't take it for granted now. But it's funny that you said you have to humble yourself and you have to do the work.
Yeah.
Because ever since having surgery, my vocal cords are sensitive. They're very stiff because of scar tissue.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even dare sing unless I warm up for like a half hour.
Wow.
I have to, so I'm like, okay, I understand the value of this. And I realize I have to put this into it if I want to get this out of it. So,
Wow. Yeah. So that it made you value it more.
totally.
Right. That's
Totally.
crazy. Man.
Yeah, so.
Reminds me of the story of Jonah. Wanting to face the things that we need to face, you know, and why don't we want to face it? I didn't know this before, but Nineveh means reasoning, right? Which is very interesting. And people who are very good at like being stubborn and you don't want to deal with those people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what do? You try to stay away from them because you don't want to get caught up in
Yeah.
an argument. But God was telling him to go to that place, and he's like, no.
Face it.
He ran away, and it wasn't until he took him what God does with us.
Yeah.
We have to go. Sometimes we got to go to
Yeah.
those
So
deep
true.
places,
So true.
you know. And then that's where the healing comes.
Yeah.
And then we're able to go. And we don't know, and then that's where the healing comes. Because all Jonah did was speak like 4 words, and
They were just.
they repented, and God spared them.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. That's good. That's really good.
yeah.
So speaking of that,
Speaking of Jonah,
speaking of God, so let's talk about what led you guys. Like, did you guys grow up Christian?
Yeah. We grew up in, my parents coming from Nigeria. Nigeria is very culturally Christian. Everyone is a Christian, in the different parts of the spectrum. Maybe it's just the way that, everyone around you lives, and so you kind of identify as Christian, go to church on Sunday or something. And then there are the devout Christians who, they're at the prayer vigils every week, they're on the prayer calls and things like that. That's my family. We're in church all the time. We had church at our home at least every other week. My dad had started a gathering in Pittsburgh.
The original gathering.
The original gathering. It has really, I think, influenced, our love for like house churches and house things, all things house.
Which is something that you do now, right?
Yeah, well, in a form.
In some ways. But yeah, we were always in a church, some kind of church setting, and the only thing that was more important than church to our parents was schooling and education. So if we had homework, we could get out of church.
We could?
If we, If we had like a test,
I would have known that.
college years, I didn't realize how much of my world know about the world, and I didn't know the things that I'd never experienced until really after college, because I commuted all 4 years. I would say I was pretty sheltered. Peace was the one who's kind of spread her wings a little bit earlier.
Oh, okay.
Even though she's younger than me. I mean,
that's usually how it works.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
Left the house. Like, we left home, we moved out of the house, out of the city, started our own lives.
Okay.
But I think for most of when we lived at home, I mean, we were on a tight leash.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking about like my oldest brother. I mean, he was on a tight leash. And as soon as he left for college, it was just 180, complete 180. It was like he never tasted freedom before, and he took
lost
every
his
ounce.
mind.
He did, lost his mind, my other brother, and I were kind of like the middle ones, and so I think we kind of approached things very differently. And Peace was pretty much like my.
I lost my mind.
She lost her mind.
So do you think they sheltered you too much?
They certainly did.
Yeah.
They did the best they could, but we really only saw one side of life.
Right.
So is there's got to be something to that with, religion,
Yes.
Christianity.
Yes.
Like, are we sheltering our kids too?
Yeah.
And then we're smothering them
Absolutely.
in a sense. You know what I mean?
I've been sharing my story a lot recently with different friends. I've been meeting up for coffee, and it's just been coming up like, so tell me about your upbringing. So this has been like a theme lately. Mm-hmm. But as I explain it, I tell people, I thank God that my parents were dedicated to teaching us like right from wrong. Mm-hmm. And like, I thank God for their faith, because I know it informed so much of my worldview. But our upbringing was very legalistic. Mm-hmm. So all we really knew within the confines of, religion and faith was black and white. If you sin, God will be mad at you. Mm-hmm. If you do the right thing, God will be happy with you. Experiential, at least for me, and I think for the most of my siblings, an experiential understanding of like who God is, and like how you can know God and have a relationship with God. Like for me, all I knew was I better do the right thing, because I don't want to get beat by my parents.
Rachel was like, you guys are kindred spirits in this moment.
Rachel, are you children of an immigrant?
No. I'm not. But I was raised in a similar kind of mentality,
Gotcha.
I guess I could say. Like, all the best meaning, but my dad had been through a lot. Mm-hmm. And so then he became a Christian, and it was a complete 180, and everyone in his life was like, yeah, right, this is going to last for a minute. Mm-hmm. And it's lasted for the rest of his life. Mm-hmm. But when you have that like turnaround moment sometimes, it's very intense. And that intensity can...
Speaking of that, do you think that has an effect on like homosexuality, even descending into trans, or what is it now? I don't know.
Non-binary.
There you go, non-binary, because that's even going even deeper.
Ooh, yeah.
But
what does non-binary even mean?
I think it means they don't identify with a
As one or
gender.
the other.
They don't see gender as a binary male, female.
Yeah.
two
Because I
things.
think
So you can just
Right.
be whatever you want to be at that moment. Is that what they mean?
So
Yeah.
I guess more that there's a spectrum, and that instead of male, female, right, left, two things, and this duality, that there's all of this room, and there might be points at the end, but there's a lot in between. I may be wrong about that.
I think you got it right.
but like kind
Yeah.
of a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what I've been thinking about.
Yeah.
But so you have people who get frustrated because they don't see what they think they should see. And that frustration turns into regret. And that regret, because it's like loss. You know, if you don't see what you think you're supposed to see,
Yeah.
it's like losing something, especially if it's your kid. Like somebody who's religious, they have a gay son, right?
Yeah. Right.
So that loss turns into regret, and then that regret turns into rage.
Resentment or something.
Resentment. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, rage is the outcome.
Yeah.
And then now you're that's where you get people beating somebody. Like, how can somebody who calls himself a Christian hurt that they have from not taking the word into actual being or manifestation into this world? You know what I mean? It's even lost from that.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
we believe these things, but then we don't really believe these things because we don't see them happen in our life, and I don't see what you're saying. You know what I mean?
Right.
But we're just holding on to pride and like, well, it doesn't matter. You know, it is what it is. And then it becomes, but we're really not seeing it. So you're not dealing with the deep hurt inside of yourself. You're trying to cover it up.
I'm understanding you correctly. It's like many people in the religious spectrum were never taught how to engage with or deal with or interpret a lot of what they see going on in the world around them. So they don't have a filter for it.
Right. But even before that, what I mean,
Right,
so
right. Yeah.
so because of that, they don't know how to deal with that. Because if you're putting your faith into something and you don't see
You
it
don't
happen,
see it happening. Absolutely.
you know, and it's because of I think it's because of the leaders, you know.
Totally.
Well, I have been thinking a lot about this lately, thinking a lot about the church and the church control their congregation or members. And I think when we decide that we can control God, we don't see God move, because you can't control, if you can't control God, if you try and control God, which you can't do, God's not going to operate on your terms. Like, he operates on his terms. And so, you know, we have a lot of places of worship that, you know, want to control an experience and want to make, I guess, define how people receive, you know, the Spirit of God. Like, you know, the Spirit of God, Spirit, you know, Father being God, Son, Jesus, Holy Spirit, this thing that in many cases feels very intangible, something that you can't quite touch, but a presence, more or less. But also the Spirit being a person. Like, it's the kind of a, I don't know how to, if I can explain this a little better, maybe you can help me a little bit. Maybe like a real tangible sense of the presence of God in your lives. I think some people might even call it conscience, but I think it's even deeper and more than that. But all that to say that the church has spent a lot of time trying to control the Spirit, you know, and control the.
Yeah.
And so when we turn church into a little c, into a weekly meeting, into a 90-minute service, and then we've created, you know, the Happy Meal version of God, or the boxed up version of God that says, okay, this is when you're spiritual in your week. And, you know, every the 6 days, other 6 days of the week, you know, you can do whatever you want. Everywhere we go and everything we do, we're controlling God, or we're trying to. And when that happens, people they live out lives that are controlled, where they exclude God. And if you exclude God from your life, you can't see him move in your life.
Right.
And I think this is where we are in a culture now, where we've excluded God from certain things, and we don't see him moving, and we don't see the God of the Bible because we haven't made room for him.
Yeah.
Totally.
And I think it's because, well, we don't know what we want, number one. Like, and we read about, you know, what's one thing? Think on these, whatever is lovely, whatever is pure.
Yeah.
Like, how do you know what's lovely? How do you know what's pure? You got to go to the one who
Who is
Yeah.
lovely and pure.
You're right.
Author of it.
So you can, because we're not
Because
pure.
otherwise, you can determine whatever that is for yourself.
Right. And I think that's what the church, like when you go to church, I was just talking to my other brother, he lives in San Diego, about this, because he told me he went to a church. And he said everybody,
Creepy.
it's like a creepy,
It's super creepy. Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, and it's, and I dealt with this with my mom and my wife, the fakeness with Christianity, because my mom, she's a Christian, and I love my mom to death, and she learned from the experience between my wife and her, and my wife, and you see when people are fake.
Yeah.
You know, if they don't realize anything else, they know when you're not being genuine, you know, and honest.
Absolutely.
I think just to speak on that a little bit, when we were talking to Jeremiah, it's hot. Remember when Jeremiah was here and he asked us, like, why do you think there's not so many men in the church? And I was telling him that I honestly believe that it's because men have a more keen sense to not want to be pandered to or be bought into manipulation in a sense. So it's like what going on, and they're just like, oh, this ain't for me. You know,
And I think a lot of women, well, American women especially, like, they're in the church because they've been hurt so much.
right?
So then they're there to get something, but they'll fall for anything because they've been hurt so much. You know, my mom was one of them. And it took her. My mom's 60.
Chill.
No, but
She doesn't
she doesn't care.
She doesn't care. She's 63, by the way.
Okay, 63. So, but it took her a while to heal. You know, and it's through experiences. And you were talking
She's
about
still
that
going through that though.
in your
Yeah.
like what you wrote. You know, you dealing with people like face to face. You know,
Yeah.
but her relationship with my wife didn't get better until my mom stopped being fake. You know, and because she was working out a religion. Oh, I have to love her. I have to love her. I have to love her. But it was never from a real place
Yeah.
to where she just became honest
Yeah.
and laid it all out, all her feelings, and then she let it go. People are so afraid, and they're caught up in identity, you know, and they're afraid of the fake identity of the church. I call it the trans church. I'm sorry, guys. But it's like, because it's, just to explain myself, because I know you guys are like, because it's man's ways dressed up as the bride, right?
I get it.
So, and the true bride is prepared by the husband.
Right.
You know, we come into it because we're prepared.
She's giving you crazy eyes. She's giving you crazy eyes.
Rachel's always giving crazy eyes. When Jake starts talking, Rachel starts.
Yeah, she's
Funny.
But so what I'm saying is, the church is trying to dress itself up like in an appearance,
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
produce, like you were saying. There's nothing's going to manifest.
Yeah, yeah.
It's going to stop the movement, the flow of the spirit.
Right.
You can't produce life. It has to be, you have to humble yourself. You have to allow God to prepare you for that marriage.
I'll say this much about all of this, like, church conversation, is that people are leaving the church in mass droves, and listen, I love the body of Christ. I love the church. I love the people of God, but the way that we've been doing church in this country, it's not working.
Right.
It's not working, and there are people who are now who are, what do they call it, like sniffing the funk or whatever. You can't fake it anymore.
Right.
And I think that it's a necessary thing. This mass exodus is
Right.
necessary, because people are like, okay, this isn't working for me. You know, like, first of all, you know, I can't come into the church because everyone's judging me.
Right.
I can't bring my problems. I can't be real here. You know,
No problems are being dealt with.
nothing's being dealt with. We're sugarcoating everything. We're
Right.
acting like life is perfect. We have Jesus, yay. But the reality is, life is hard and life is not perfect.
Right.
And the church should be a place where you can bring all that stuff and be like, okay, help me work through this. I want to work through this. Let's work it through it together. But now you bring that in there, people judge you. Oh, you're not holy enough. You don't have enough faith. And I mean, let's be real. We live in Philly. We're in Philly. You guys are in Camden, but there's some major similarities in that both of our cities have a lot of brokenness.
Yeah.
I mean, drugs, big thing. Crime, big thing.
Yeah.
And we just can't play church anymore. We have to be in a place where we can address real issues and get to the heart of brokenness. People are broken. 2 years ago, I stepped away from the church as we know it. I stepped away from traditional church. So did Joy. And there's a lot of story that goes with it. But I realized in that time in my life that what I needed was something more intimate, more real, that was based in connecting with people. And there are a lot of churches that do, they go out of their way to try to foster relationships. And I give them mad props. A lot of churches do it so well. But a lot of churches don't. And people think that, like she said, spending 90 minutes on a Sunday is going to be enough to just like get your fix and then go into your week. No, we need relationships and we need each other. And 90 minutes on Sunday is not enough.
And we need a real relationship with God.
We need exactly, and it thrives in community.
Right.
Like the first church,
absolutely,
it thrives in community. You don't get that anymore from your church experience.
I think that one of the big problems with, like you were saying, church in this country, and it's not only in this country.
No.
I think, and we talk about this all the time, it's the fact that we still don't, we have been totally led down the wrong path of what the identity of church is, because every church that we know of was established out of a form of control.
Absolutely.
With the Catholic Church, back when it was established.
Well, in a sense, but there was breaking away. But every time it got controlled.
But that's what I'm saying. Like it was all breaking away, but still on the foundation of what that church was. Like no one was breaking away. No one was breaking away with saying like, all right, let's establish a relationship with God.
Yeah.
Right.
No one was breaking away saying let's go back to the Father and get revelation. Everyone was breaking away with, well, we're going to have these rules and we're going to set up this situation, and everyone's going to.
Well, I mean, it's literally, you get revelation, but then it's the same thing that Lucifer did. It gets subjugated. Like, it just... You focus on that revelation, and you forget where it came from.
Right,
you know what I mean?
And that's the thing. A lot of churches now, pride is their identity. Membership, tithes, numbers. And that becomes your very first and foremost numbers. The churches, who denominations, or this idea of like, are you Baptist, or you're Lutheran, or you're Episcopal? Where did that all come from? We are so divided. If I weren't a believer, I wouldn't want to be a believer based on what I see around me. So much division.
When I first started to commune with God, and one of the first things I asked him was like, God, why are there so many different denominations? Like, what's going on with that?
Control.
I remember he said to me, because you were never meant to live outside of my presence.
Right.
But that goes back to my point. So the idea of the Catholic Church, the way it was founded and set up, and to all the people that are Catholic out there, I have, it's not anything against you. It's just the honesty of what it was and how it was founded. The idea was to cut people off from access to God. It was you had to go through them to get it. You couldn't even own a Bible. You couldn't know the Word of God. You were
not
killed.
only that, it was only in Latin.
Yeah, it was only in Latin, and if you could speak Latin and you had a Bible, you were killed. So it's like the whole purpose was to isolate you. Or
to keep you ignorant.
Yeah, to keep you ignorant, because it was a way to unify Rome. Because Rome was.
But again, we don't war against flesh and blood. So always to keep us from God.
Right. Right.
So it's a.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
But it comes from.
Right.
A different place.
But what I'm saying is like it comes from a different place, but that became the foundation for what we know of as church now.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So and everyone,
And that's what gets people to go into a lot of the new age and
because they want to see real things and real power.
Right.
And I have enough friends who are different religions. Some of them might be watching now. I have Buddhist friends. I have friends who practice a lot of different, like Taoism and all that. And I respect them for a lot of reasons. I respect their search for God, and I respect that they are on a journey. But what I find is that a lot of times they experience more power in their spiritual lives because they are not under the umbrella of religion and control. But the thing about it is that Christians and believers have access to this power.
Right.
But you have to be able to pull back from what you've been told, taught, and the structure of what you think is right and wrong, and really take God out of the box. God will show himself to you if you take him out of the box, and he'll blow your mind.
Yeah.
But the church isn't seeing that. They're just
Right.
not seeing that because they've made it about all these things that
Right.
involve control.
And I would say not just the church. I think that people, and we can just talk about individuals. A lot of times we don't want accountability. You know, we don't want to know what we don't know sometimes, because if we know what we don't know, then we have to do something.
To do
about
something. Yep.
it. And it's easier.
So we want to
just-
stay ignorant.
Yeah, it's easier to stay ignorant. It's easier to do life on your terms. You know, we all take pride in the fact that we're individuals and we want to do life on our terms. But there are times
think we
in
wrote
life.
some-
I had this conversation with a friend several months back about how frustrated I was by like the self-love movement, you know, and the idea of, you know, loving self kind of overshadowing the idea of loving others, you know. I don't necessarily think that the self-love movement was created to do that, but I think we spend so much time focusing on that, you know, in the I don't know if you would call it a different religious movement, or if you wouldn't call it a religious movement at all. But I think we never as a culture put weight on the idea of self-sacrifice. And the church you know, preaches that message of self-sacrifice, but doesn't really live it out that well.
Right.
But I sometimes wonder what it would look
Serving.
like if
Like-
we kind of, if we had more, we had more of an inclination to decide that we loved others more than ourselves. And I don't mean self-sacrifice in the sense of not taking care of your needs, but I think we spend so much time caring about what we want and not thinking about what other people want. And then we become this society that's super individualistic, and we don't live out that message of Christ. And that was the message of Christ, and that is the call of the church. Because if the church were really being the church, it wouldn't care about the numbers, it would care about the discipleship. Who do we have in our fold, and how can we grow them to know Christ, to know the heart of Christ, and to live out a life that's fully realized, where not only are you, you know, living a Christian, you know, Christ-like, living out a life that was like Christ, where he loved people and lived a life of service, but that you're also calling other people into their greatness and calling other people into true transformation. And I think that that's what it actually means to be a Christian and a believer.
Yeah.
But that requires a lot of selflessness,
Yeah.
because that's all discipleship. you
Which
know?
is something that is becoming, I think, like almost stamped out from the minds of people. Like you wrote a song about narcissism, and we have a phrase that we coined here on the show. Jake said it by mistake one day. We were talking about something, and we call it a narcissism, because it's like,
But was it?
yeah. So it became like, it's going to be a T-shirt soon, I promise. But it's like, it's literally this whole societal structure.
Nobody
that's-
steal that.
Yeah, no, it's copywritten already, trademark. So it's like everything that you experience from your day-to-day life, especially with social media and everything, it's teaching you to only focus in on what is happening to you at all times, or what's giving you more likes, what's giving you more attention, what can you do to boost your status? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How many followers do you have? You know. Oh, Tamron was out. Okay, but so that's. I feel like now it's even more a problem for people to have that idea of like, let me care about other people. Let me not be so focused on myself. Let me think who's in need around me. You know what I mean? And I think that's something that is becoming more and more of a problem.
Yeah.
I think like to be like Christ is very subjective if we're trying to figure it out ourselves. You know what I mean? But it's actually objective if we go to the Father. You know what I mean? Johanan, he was the prophet that showed the way to Christ, right? And his name was God is gracious. You know, that's what his name meant. And so God is gracious. Grace is his ability in this world, right? Seen. If we don't see that, we're not going to be able to come into it. And we are that vessel. We're the temple, right? So the temple is the way. Jesus said he was the way, the truth, and the life, and he was talking about the temple. And Jews called the temple the way, the truth, the life.
no.
So it was the outer court where they did the sacrifice was the way. The truth is where the menorah is.
Crazy.
The life
we never learned.
is the inner part of, it's the holy of holies. So when he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, that had more meaning to them. You know what I mean?
They understood what he was
Temple.
referring to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Deep. Wow.
But my point is that when somebody speaks the word of God, when you prophesy over somebody, you're showing them the way. And the way is sacrifice.
Absolutely.
And the fire is his fire. Because he always brought the fire to the sacrifice, right? And we have to lay down our lives. So there's no greater love that you lay down your life for you can see how to lay down your life
Yeah.
for somebody else.
Totally.
You know,
Totally.
and even that's that, like, you can make that a religion where you got to be like Christ. You know what I mean? And I think it becomes a burden
Yeah.
for people.
Yeah.
And it's so simple.
It's
You know what I mean? It's just so simple.
Yeah.
I love it. Like I think of this often, that most things are simple, but most things are not easy. And simplicity and ease are two very
Yeah.
different things.
Right.
But simple things are. It's usually everything that you're supposed to do in life is simple, but it's not easy.
Very it relates to this one, and I think about this a lot when it comes to believers, Christ followers, and politics. And I always feel a little safer to talk about this because I'm a self-professed independent, and I mean that through and through. I mean, I usually vote independent because I'm not quite satisfied with the options that are given to us.
Right.
But I know that for me, there was a lot of disappointment in the so-called church and Christ, the response of many Christ followers. Not only in like our last political season, but even like moving forward when it comes to this topic of like self-sacrifice. I think in America there is, and I wonder like where are we getting that from as Christ followers? Is that modeled in the word that we believe in our scripture anywhere? So I could say so much more, but I'm curious to hear what you guys feel about Christians' response to like the political temperature and climate in our nation.
I think that
There was way too much silence. There was way too much silence.
well,
I mean,
because
I gotta-
it's a very broad, like it's a huge thing to unpack, right?
It is.
Yeah.
So I think, honestly, the Christian reaction to everything in our society has been disappointing.
True.
You know what I mean? Just the approach to how we deal with, everything from, the violence to our communities, to our families, how we raise our kids, what we teach them is important. What we teach them about life, like the values that they should care about. Like, we're not doing a good enough job, each one of us in our homes. And once you establish that, then it spreads beyond that to your community, and then beyond that to the between Christianity and real world things. It's like two separate things, right? It's like you go to church, but then whatever happens outside of that, they're not connected.
Yeah. I think there's a need, but you can't try to be a justifier.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I think a lot of people are trying to bring justice, and God's the justifier.
Yeah,
And-
the idea of a
Definitely.
justice warrior is like misguided, I feel
Yes,
like.
I fully agree with that.
Yeah.
I fully agree with
And
that.
what's interesting to me is that we all want justice. We want things to be done right, and we want people to pay for what they've done, or get the hardest hand of the law or whatever. But when we step back and we ask ourselves, okay, well, what if I found myself in a situation? Would I want that same heavy-handedness that I'm asking for these other people? And this doesn't mean that they're off the hook because you wouldn't want that same treatment. But I think if we reflect on treating other people truly how we would want to be treated, it helps us to see every situation a little bit differently, and it helps us to see people as people and not issues, which is something that we're guilty of in this country. We're always thinking about people as issues instead of thinking about people as people.
I think everyone is being
Polarized.
Yeah, but it's more of what I was gonna say is everyone is being hypnotized into this sense of like they're the enemy and they're evil in a sense. Like it's becoming so bad where it's like those people over there are evil,
Right.
and if we don't stop them, we're allowing evil to exist,
Right.
And it's becoming. Go ahead, Rach.
And like, what better way to divide and conquer and not let people talk and
Exactly.
have mutual ground and come to the same conclusions together?
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's the tactics of who? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's
The
like,
enemy
It's
comes
so
to kill,
true.
steal, and destroy.
right.
Yeah.
It's literally division.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's dividing and conquering. It's keeping us in our little diatribes,
Absolutely.
our little segregated groups,
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
you can be controlled and be
Yeah.
told this is how you're supposed to think because you're here, and this is
Yeah.
how you think because you're there, and you guys hate each other.
Yeah.
So that way
Right.
we can continue to control
But
everything.
Right.
in my opinion, not even in my opinion, because God spoke surface and wants people to do. And if you glorify Trump and look at him as a god, then
Yeah.
you're gonna miss it too.
The other thing is like
You
when
know?
people, because like you said, like there's a lot of people, especially in the Christian, faith, that will
Yeah.
act like Trump is some,
Savior.
yeah. And it's
Yeah.
like, what are you talking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a human being.
Like,
Yeah.
and they will make excuses for the horrible things that he does and
Yes,
says, and like
yes.
it's like,
Giving up your desires and your wishes, and you say, okay, I'm adopting the spirit of Christ. His will is my will. You give up your rights to want what you want.
right,
Right.
And whether you're on left or on the right, you no longer have a platform to say this is my way and this is the way it should be.
right,
Many things that we as a nation needed to deal with.
right.
And it was all under the carpet, and now it's on the surface, and there's been a lot of polarization. But you know what? It has to get bad before it gets better. Is it going to get better? Maybe we can talk about that.
Right.
But all that to say is that now when we look at that as believers, we really have one mission. And that mission, number one, is to stand for, God and what his viewpoint is in the earth, and to bring like heaven down to the earth. But there is really no right or wrong way to do that. And I think that as we approach this issue, whether you're someone who leans more to the right and say you voted for Trump, listen, I'm not here to judge you. You had your reasons for voting for these policies that you're passionate about.
Right.
At the same time, you cannot make excuses for the things that you see that don't line up
Right.
with what you stand for as a believer.
Right.
You cannot do that. Now, if you're on the left side, and let's say you didn't vote for Trump, you cannot go against what it means to be a believer, which is to speak in love and
Right.
to act in love and to unify and to heal the gap and just make everything about justice
Right.
and get revenge. I mean, the thing is, like, we are so polarized that people have forgotten what it means to be Christ-like. And that's what we're missing in the midst
Right.
of all of it.
Right. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, I don't know. I think with Trump, and I think people, I think a lot of people don't realize, like, everybody's at a different place. Like, our job is not, we can't judge before the time of judgment, right? We gotta speak on what God has shown us, and that's it. That's our burden, and it's light. You know what I mean? And anything else we do, we put too much in.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have to be healed.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're putting our emotions in, and
I think we wrote a song about that.
So funny.
that's the song.
Where do we go?
Oh, okay, yeah,
That'll be out soon.
yeah. But yeah. So I think like I know that if we don't see it the way God sees it, we're gonna miss it. You know, and to me, that's the most important thing. And he changes our perspective, and he changed my perspective on Trump. You know what I mean? Because I trusted in God. I voted for Trump, and it was prophetically about what he's doing in the earth, you know, and in America, because there's so much doom and gloom stuff, but God is raising up America, in my opinion, and he's gonna do it through people that we don't expect.
He always
You
does.
know,
That's the funny thing is that I think like people build up these ideas in their minds
Yeah.
or these images of who it is that God's going to bring or who it is that God's going to use or who's the type of person,
Yeah.
what it makes to be a leader, what does it make? What's the image of someone that is a good leader or someone that God would use? And we've been taught to like, you know, when you go into your mind and you think of that person, it's totally not that guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like,
Totally.
yeah.
here's an example. And I when I'm talking about this stuff, I always go back to what God showed me because that's like all I can do. You know what I mean? So he did, and there was no flaw, but they lifted up their heart against me. So if something is wicked or twisted, twist it back. If it's perverted, bring it back to the origin, bring it back to the beginning, right? And
Right, because that's what wicked means, right?
right, it's to be twisted. So if we can look past the surface and we can see just something that he's showing us in somebody, we can pull it out
Oh yeah.
and we can water it, you know what I mean?
For sure.
And it's going to come from people a lot of times that look so that have so much anger, so much rage, you know what I mean, that are so judgmental.
Like
Right.
our podcast last week.
Right.
A lot of people couldn't understand.
Yeah.
Like,
I watched a Tindy clip.
So I'm gonna piggyback or go back to something you said because I don't disagree with you. I actually
Okay.
agree with you, but I think my interpretation is a little bit different.
Okay.
You know, because I'm not someone who knows the heart of man, so who am I to judge whether Trump is a Christian or not? But I do believe this, and this is actually why that word Christian is so broad.
Yeah.
It's so broad. Christian can mean a fan of
Right.
Christ.
right.
You know who Christ is. You think he was a pretty cool guy. You like the words he said in the Bible. You kind of believe him. You kind of agree with him. Yeah, I'm a Christian.
Right. Right.
Christian can be a follower
Right.
of Christ. Okay, what Christ said, I adopt for my life. That's the way I want to live. I'm going to abide by these principles. Christian can be someone who has adopted the spirit with Christ
You
each
know
and
what's
every
funny
day.
is like typically those are the ones that say I don't call my right.
So when I go back to Trump, he could be a Christian.
right.
What I would say is that they say you will know them by their fruit, and they will, and also they will know we are Christians by our love. Now, I would say if Trump is a Christian, would I put him in more of the fan category? Maybe follower, around there? Maybe, yeah. But I will say we all see that there's a lot of transformation. We're all going through transformation. We all need to grow. So as we see our president and we pray for him, as we should, we need to have a realistic idea of what we're praying for to manifest in his life. So I feel like if we just say, you know, I want Trump to move from just being a fan of Christ, who says, you know, I don't need to be forgiven of my sins because I don't believe I need forgiveness. Like those things that I'm like, whoa. You must be a fan because if you truly were a follower or you indwelt his spirit, you would understand what this concept of like sin and missing the mark is. But that's something that, you know, you need to grow in. That's what I'm going to pray for. And I think our words are important. And I mess up every day. I say stuff that hurt people. But that's where the conviction comes in. Because I have that spirit of Christ, I'm like, oh, I don't feel good about what I just said to that person. Sorry, God.
Yeah.
Let me go back and apologize. Have power.
Yeah.
We all, the things we say have power. And when we speak into our reality. We speak into our atmosphere. And we can, there's this power in our tongue, it's scriptural. We can change the climate of a people and of a nation by what we say and what we speak. So I then pray for Trump. I'm like, let him understand the power of his words. Let him speak in love, God.
Absolutely.
Let him act in love, God. And that, the transformation that will come from his life looking different, 100 times more powerful than any political policy that he could make or do, because then you get to someone's heart.
Right.
You change people by getting into their heart, not by making rules and laws and regulations.
Right.
So that's how I pray.
Now
Right.
let's take that one to the victim. Like, what if I'm the villain? And what are the implications of that? Like, what if everything that we as a country has done, the media, all that we've done to kind of like spew hatred in response to all the things that Trump has said that we don't agree with? Like, what if he was surrounded by people who supported him and showed him what it looked like to step up, you know? Because he's in office, you know? He's in office now. We can't do anything about it. 4 years. So what if he had people around him that would support him and show him what it looked like to do his job and do it to the best of his ability? Not to say that we're never going to know it. So I think that as a country, we all could have stepped up a little bit. My attitude toward him hasn't been great either. But I think like if we could have collectively as a country, you know, supported him, I mean, that carries a lot of weight. But, you know,
I don't think it does,
there.
though. I don't think it does carry a lot of weight. Like, what would be the difference between supporting someone who's been elected into office and what we're having now? You know what I mean? Like, if we supported him and like just full out supported him, and it wasn't the whole, because remember, like right after he got elected, it was crying out in the streets, protesting. It was burn the country down. So it's like, if
Right.
what do we need to do?
Yeah.
Like, what would be so bad? What bad could come from that?
Yeah, it could only get better. Right.
Like, if we're already having these problems, like, look at what we were just talking about before the podcast, all of these, like, white supremacist attacks, all of these, like, targeted mass shootings, like, people just, like, you know, someone bombed the ICE facility, you know, someone, the guy that sent the bombs to all of the people in you know, Fox News, or the news member, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, so you're telling me it would have been worse than that? You know what I mean? Like, to support rather than just like totally just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think about that all the time too.
But again, it, like you were saying, it only gets worse before it gets better. And I do want to say that sometimes love can be, you know, a father's love doesn't feel good all the time.
Straightforward.
You know, and I to be honest with you, some of the stuff like that's they're definitely twisting a lot of what Trump is saying. Not to say that Trump says stuff, you know, in a great way, but I will say that sometimes you need to be abrupt. You know, Obama was very articulate and he said the right things in terms of his training, but that's all learned. You know what I mean? And I think like anybody can learn how to pay attention and observe people and how can I best deliver what I'm gonna do. You know, and then there's like,
Isn't that a wizard?
you know, but he wasn't great at actually being real. You know, and I think Trump he's not a politician in the sense of like he's not from that world. You know, he's an outsider, and
That's why I like him, man.
and we're getting somebody who's an outsider. And I think a lot of the stuff he says is from the heart of a father. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's hard for people who don't know how to have a father to deal with hearing what a father has to say. You know what I mean? Like people who, let's take Christian, like, and again, I don't say Christianity. I'm just saying it now, but because I don't like, become believers. We're like foster kids, right? We don't know how to act in the house of our Father, right? We don't even know who He is. We don't know His ways. We don't know anything about Him. So it's hard even to deal with anything He has to say to us. You know, sometimes it is abrupt. Sometimes he'll tell us one thing and we gotta just obey, you know, do this.
And because we don't understand love in that way, we can lash out.
Right. So then we'll go back because we're hurting. And what he's trying to do is draw us out of our hurt. You know, but we don't get it, so we draw back. You know, and speaks and it doesn't feel good. But if you will honor your father, you can step out of that, you know, and you can come into some reality. Or what are you trying to say? If you don't, there's healing there. Like, that's why it says honor your mother and your father. Because if you look at them, you can always pick apart everything they do. Like, just had this conversation with my stepson. Like, you can always pick me apart. I'm not perfect. I'm going to say things that you don't like. I'm going to say, live it apart. You're going to miss all the good. You're going to miss everything that I've done, you know, but more importantly, you're going to miss the Father in heaven. Because, and this country, we have to honor this country, you know, and the people who are here that are growing up in this country, they're burning the flag, and you know, they're dishonoring this country because they're spoiled, because they grew up and they're privileged. You know, you know what I mean? Like, where else? Because people were saying like, oh no, Sweden, that's a great place, but now we're seeing like, oh, it might not be as good as people thought. You know, a lot of the socialist stuff, it breaks down eventually. Being nice, people are going to take advantage of being nice.
I do agree with that.
You know,
I do agree with that. Yeah.
People are like, you're just enabling them to stay where they're at.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think I'm hearing you, and actually, it's interesting that I'm agreeing with you, but I'm always playing devil's advocate because I'm always this person that borders the fence. I have one foot on one side, one foot on the other side.
Right.
And that comes a lot from the people I surround myself with. I have people on both ends. And I think I'm trying to remember everything I was thinking as you were speaking. One of the things is about the father's heart thing, and I think that I am in agreement that honoring is important. It's a principle of God.
Something lost.
But
also.
I think that everybody needs discipled and mentored. And that's not our place to mentor or disciple our president. And that's one of the problems, is that the nation, everyone thinks it's their place to be like telling the president how to change. And, you know, but there needs to be somebody who is helping him to grow in some of these areas that are blind spots for him. And just as in the same way that, okay, so I guess I can really relate to this because our father, as you speak intentions.
Yeah.
But my dad was a very inflammatory person, extremely inflammatory person. As we've gotten older, we've come to love him, and we've healed a lot of those wounds and things like that. But I realized that I had to do a lot of healing in my life as I got to the place of understanding the heart that my dad had and some of the blind spots.
Right.
And I guess I have an intimate experience of the damage and the wounds that it caused in me to get like the truth from my dad, but not always receive it in love.
Right.
And so when I see people who are wounded by some of these things, it's not that the intention is wrong, because there's good intent in a lot of these things.
Let's do this. Let's get to something that people are wounded by that Trump says, so we can, because
okay.
Yeah, like just pick one thing, because I'm trying to.
Okay, when he called African nations, excuse my language, everyone. Can I say this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, shithole country. I get that. You know what you're saying is that there's a lot of room for growth, but as someone who's like from this part of the world. That doesn't feel very good.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like to. There's a lot of pride in my culture, and there's a lot of pride, and we have room for growth. But help us grow, encourage us, don't shame us.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's a perfect example of how our words hold power.
Okay, but let me just play devil's advocate like you like to do.
Go for it.
This is getting good.
So for the one thing I will say is, we all remember the story correctly when I researched it myself, because they make it seem like he was on TV saying, "Oh, these are shithole." No, it was like a private thing,
Right.
that someone went and told a reporter he said this.
Totally.
So we're getting third, fourth hand information
Totally.
about it, right? And it's not something that was meant for him to say to the public to put these countries down in that way. He was making a point about people making statements about places that don't have the same economy or don't have the same type of country that we have,
totally.
and trying to talk about this country in a way when those countries have a lot of work to do. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which
so
doesn't justify it, but I understand.
it doesn't
what you're
justify
Yeah, we get
it.
what
It doesn't
he was
justify it.
doing.
But what I'm
Yeah,
saying is like
yeah.
someone who's not saying that intending it to be hurt. Like if we're saying, if we're talking amongst each other and we're making a point about something and we don't intend it to hurt the people that we're saying it about, you know what I mean? But it's something that to make a point, it happens, you know what I mean? But, so I don't see that as like, I understand why people would hear that and be hurt by it. But what I'm saying is like, I don't see that as like an intentional attack by someone.
And only in this administration would you hear something like that.
Right.
That wouldn't happen in Trump's administration. You understand what I'm saying? Like something that happens in secret like that.
Oh, you mean like
Obama?
No, you
It
mean
wouldn't happen
Obama.
to Obama.
Obama, I'm sorry.
Like there's
Yeah.
there was a lot of stuff that he said behind closed doors that we found out later, but it also wasn't pushed in the media like that.
Yeah.
Much, you know
Well,
what
that's what I mean. Like,
yeah.
But my thing
But
is,
it's a narrative that
when that gets exposed,
Right.
there should only be one response.
Right.
And if you aren't convicted to have a response, it's like, really, I really shouldn't have said it that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That for me tells me something about your character.
Right.
And I'm like, I know because, I have released myself to the Lord, and I feel strong convicted when I say things that are hurtful. That even if I say things all the time about things and people I shouldn't say, but the minute I'm like, oh, that hurt somebody.
Right. And if you find out they heard about it, then you have to be like, all right.
yeah, but I think
Right, but I actually am convicted. It's not
Right,
just
yeah,
like I'm
right.
trying to clean up my mess.
Right.
I'm like, oh man, I can see how that hurt
Yeah.
you. And that's what I want to see in a leader. So,
Right.
I mean, he's not perfect. I guess
Yeah.
that's what we're all saying.
Right.
What I'm saying is I want to see him grow into these things.
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
I get you. But I think like
Gotcha.
no. But I think there's like he's the president of the United States, the free world. And there's a lot.
Moen just wants to say people are too soft. That's
If you need two women who believe that,
Okay, I'll let you talk. I'm going to say this. I really am playing devil's advocate because none of this really gets to me.
Right,
but I
right.
see how it gets to other people, and I'm always for the underdog.
But maybe it shouldn't though. Maybe it shouldn't.
Yeah.
Like I said,
I don't know.
Is that something that is it wrong to enable people to
Stay
be
in their
victimized in
definitely. You don't want to enable people.
But that's what I'm saying. So
But
like
we
giving
lack
them,
empathy in this
giving
situation.
I understand empathy to a sense, but there's also like when you have y'all don't have kids, but when you have kids and when you see them doing something to get empathy from you, or being like acting like they're hurt by something because they want empathy, sometimes you have to shut that down and be like, no, you're not getting that. No,
Totally.
you know what I mean?
Totally.
Because what
We gotta pull up that clip.
Which one?
Yeah.
Wait, you wanted to say
Go ahead.
something.
While we're pulling it
No,
up,
I
you
was
can
just
say.
saying that's why I like Trump, because he tells us. If he was talking about Cambodia and saying, it's a shithole country, I'm like, yep, that's the truth. I'm serious.
Like, but because you know why?
But
Because
it don't affect you.
the truth
Yeah.
doesn't hurt you.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
the truth
saying?
hurts
Like,
people,
and-
and that's what it is. Like when you were saying, like, oh, I hurt you, but the truth hurts you.
but if it's the truth, right?
And what is it? The word of God, the truth is a double-edged sword. Like
It's almost like the statement with
able
you.
to divide soul from spirit. Like we're literally always the times that I gotta press in, and I know I'm gonna have to deal with this, and it's not gonna be great. And when you press into that, that's when the thing raises up, and now you can identify it and show them, look, that's it right there. Let that go. You get what I'm saying?
This is true, but you know what? Now I'm going to come back on that. And scripturally,
Yeah.
you can speak in tongues of angels. You can have all these gifts, but if you don't have love, you're like a clanging cymbal.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
So I'm going to say,
the love
the
comes.
love.
yeah.
there's love in all of it.
Right.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
So it's
But
it's
do you have love?
But to say that love is only empathy.
Oh no.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
To say
yeah.
that love is only
Reasoning aspect. You get what I'm saying? Like, I think that's where you're trying to reason what you know out to somebody. You can never. It's actually the Father. It's the anointing that's come. It seems like it's not love at first, but it actually is love, because then you really understand what love is. You know, you really understand the Father's love. Like my kids, you see it with kids so much, because kids will manipulate you and try
we
to
have two
get.
10-year-old little brothers. Trust and believe we understand having kids. Yeah.
They try you know.
Yes.
And my wife, she's a little softer, and sometimes I got to be the bad guy, you know. And then they're mad at me, but then they want to play with me 2 seconds later. Like,
Yeah.
they love me,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Because I'm not just gonna be, no, that's it. I'm gonna tell you, but then I'm gonna explain it to you, you know, because I love you, and then
and I gotta make you understand why.
Discipline.
Yeah.
Right.
That you show them the love behind the discipline. Because if you just discipline your kids and tell them the harsh
Yeah.
reality, and you don't support it with, I'm doing this because I care, I'm doing this because I love you.
Because
your kid's
this
gonna
will
grow
lead
up.
to that, right?
Yeah, then they're gonna grow up and they're gonna have a thwarted idea of your fatherhood towards them, and there will be wounds and scars. And this is what I mean by the truth in love, because there's always a hard truth.
Yeah.
But if you don't support it with, because I care, because
Right.
I want to see you better, then that's how people receive truth. You
Right.
need the soil has to be moist to receive truth. You can't just pour truth onto hard ground and expect it to sprout.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
But I think, like with Trump, he talks about how much he loves this country,
Yeah.
how much he loves
The
these
country.
the people. He talks about the people too. People just don't hear it much. Truth and the Comforter.
Yeah.
You know, and then you have I research Hebrew a lot, so you have the Yod, right, which is the number 10, and the Yod is God's hand, right? His name Yahweh, and the work of His hand. It also represents judgment or justice. It's all about how you see it.
Yeah.
And if you want to have pride, it's going to come as judgment. You see what I'm saying? But it still can take you out of that where you're at.
Right.
Either way. If it's justice, it's because you come into Him. Seek the truth, and the truth will set you free. If it's judgment, it's because He's come to you. You understand what I'm saying? And because He loves you,
Right.
He sets judgment in your life so that He can separate you from the darkness and bring you into the light. So it's truth, it's that sword, but it also is comfort. He brings you from.
Yeah. I get where you're coming from. I get where you're coming from.
All right. Before we keep talking, I want to address some of the people in the chat. There has been some people chiming in. So first, I want to
Hi,
say
Mom.
what's up to Kathleen.
She's in there.
Kathleen says, I was very sheltered and went off the rails pretty far as soon as I could find the space. I think there can be too much sheltering, no doubt. She was talking about the church and like growing up and everything.
Absolutely.
And then we have Reese's Gallagher.
Oh yeah.
She says, hi, girl, sending you love and hugs.
Hi.
She says, love our PTOD fam. And then Peg says, hey, all, wish I could be there in person to share this conversation. Yeah, Peg Russell. And then
Peter Garcia.
Reese's comes in again.
Garcia.
Love you girls. You girls are rocking and rolling all over. Glory travels where what? Where, that's supposed to be where you go.
Don't try to
Where you go. Yes. Little typos there. Okay. Only way a person can become a Christian is accepting Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. Only through Christ is a person a born again Christian. That's Linda Sparberg. Yeah, Sparberg. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's basics. So then my mom chimes in with this long word.
Guy.
What? Hard truths. So my mom.
That is long.
My mom chimes in with this long.
We're not reading your long
We're not
word,
gonna
Mom.
read your word, Mom. People can read it if they want to, but I'm not gonna read this whole thing on there. Okay.
But we love you.
But we love you, and we appreciate you guys watching. Please share the video and like it, thumbs up, all that good stuff. You have this video ready, Rachel? Or are we losing a virtual guest?
No.
No, but this is fun, guys.
Quite public. We are live streaming. The press are here. We are before the world. And we want to put
Skip ahead a
the
little
foot
bit.
of socialism forward,
Hit the,
in the best way possible,
the
and
little
create
circle
more
thing that goes
socialism.
ahead.
Safety
Yeah,
and
right,
everyone's
right.
needs being met here, keeping each other safe.
This is the guy that lays out
keeping each
like
other
the safety
secure,
rules.
and making sure that everybody is able to fully participate in this convention. By that space to make sure that everybody is able to move in the ways that they need to move. First of all, in this room, I see that no one's clapping for me. It could be because I'm not engaging, but it also is because everyone's doing this, and that's really important because those loud bursts of noise, even though this is a noisy space, when we can do something like reducing that, that's really important. So please don't
Avoid
show up
hissing.
these, right? I'm sure there's lots of ways that we can communicate to each other without needing to rely on something that's going to hurt somebody else. We have quiet rooms that are available. There's a range of options of these, right? On 7, there's one that has video but no sound, if you still want to be able to observe the convention, but the sound is an issue. There's also on Piedmont 8, a completely quiet room. One thing to note there, please don't go into that space with anything that's like an aggressive scent, for instance, right? Because that's going to be difficult for people. The principle of collective security is we don't want to put people in stressful situations that they don't consent to, right? And we have to be accountable to each other that our actions might have negative consequences for other people. We're also talking about de-escalation, right? Because people are going to have
Living in
different
the real
experiences of things that some others might think is normal heatedness, and I think in some of that there's an inevitability there, but it's going to be really traumatic for people if we're not making an affirmative effort to de-escalate each other and de-escalate ourselves, right? If you are having a conflict,
People were doing their point of
don't
orders.
talk
It's
to
a-
cops.
it's after
Don't
this.
talk to MAGA assholes. We're almost there. Just,
Look, he's like, wait, no
but
screaming.
Thank you. We are safe and we are strong because there's power in collective work, and that's exactly what we're doing here. And we're going to rely on you to make that happen. So I'm very happy to be working with you on this project, and I hope everyone has a great convention.
I'm going
And
to hand
don't
it to
breathe.
Natalie to make one quick announcement. Okay, we have our 2 mics up front. We also have 2 additional mics that are being run. So if, for example, you make a point of information or a point of privilege, please, keep your hand up or stand if you can, and they will run a mic to you. So next, we're going to go to some further voting. So let's take a deep breath. Great. And so I'm going to welcome Brian to give the credentials report.
Hi,
so
everybody.
long.
Brian Laverne. I'm from Houston. So I will begin reading the summary. In the complete report,
Point of personal privilege. There are people at the back who are having problems hearing. Thanks.
thank you very much.
Great. So I've heard.
Hi, I motion to amend the report to strike the East Bay Locals winning slate 6 lowest ranking delegates, who are Shane R., Emma G., Andrew R., Max L., Richard M., and Charlie H. from the list of delegates from the East Bay Local of DSA, and that top vote receiving alternates, including Bonnie L.,
I think,
Colin
you skipped
PBM,
past
Dan
that
E.,
part there.
Ted F., Colin M., and Jackie A. be added to
That
that
you were
list.
talking about earlier.
Okay. I've heard a motion and a second. Could I hear your name and your chapter?
Hi, my name is Onlin Wang. I use he, him, and I'm from Philadelphia.
There's a motion to amend the roster to substitute 6 members.
Okay.
We missed.
Put that at the timestamp that we asked for. So.
Oh, you put a timestamp?
Yeah, but because I wanted to just go from the beginning, but it's all good.
Oh, yeah. That was
It was
long. That
right
way
after that. There was a part that was coming, but
it's all. There's too much talking going on, and it's triggering me. Or like one person says, "Don't use genders when you address the audience," and people keep stopping it. It's a nightmare.
They stopped it.
They
Stopped
get
it.
nothing
Stopped
done.
it.
They can't
Stopped
get
it.
any
Stopped
votes
it.
done
Yeah.
because it's just too much nerfing
There's
the world for
Yeah.
everyone,
offending
and no one can
I mean,
exist.
we live in a
yeah.
society where everyone's offended about everything.
But
everything.
that's what I think. Like, do
PC.
we when we cater too much to that
yeah.
do we create that? You know what I mean? It's like a kid that that you are constantly, it's like snowplow parenting, right? We talked about this on a podcast before. You guys ever hear about snowplow parenting?
Where you're kind of like paving the path for them,
You
essentially.
you're not only paving it, you're like knocking out any obstacles in their way
yeah, so
throughout
they don't
their
have to
entire
suffer.
life. They never have to suffer.
that's
So
all right,
there's
yeah.
like stories about it. One of the most crazy ones was this another T-shirt that we're gonna make that says "No Sauce," and it's this girl. You can look it up. It's we to a friend's house at her school. They weren't allowed to have sauce around her, and sauce.
Like food.
Any kind of sauce. Found out that there's sauce in college. And her parents literally called the school and went up there and tried to get them to like create a space for her where there would be no sauce. And the college was like, no. So she ended up dropping. But what I'm saying is like her parents kind of created that. You know what I mean? Because you totally didn't like certain things that are scary to you, you'll realize that they're not that scary once you confront them. You know what I mean? Just like, you know,
hate crimes thing or hate speech thing, I should say. You know, that becomes
yeah, hate speech is another one.
like if somebody calls you a name, it shouldn't. Why does it trigger you so much? It's because you're hurt, you know. And of course, it's like in regular, like we shouldn't be calling people names. But if it happens, how do you deal with that?
You're right.
You know, how are you gonna? And that's why we have freedom of speech, because I mean, of course, when somebody's saying "I'm gonna kill you," and that's a whole nother thing. But
well, there's already laws against that.
Exactly.
But we talked about this before too. Like when we were growing up, the phrase was "sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me," because you were being taught to not be offended by words, not let words get to you, because there's strength in that. There's power in that. There's a way to actually be more productive if you're not worried about what everyone's saying all the time.
What's up, right?
And I think what
Not to be a snowflake. That's all I was gonna say.
yeah. But I think when you take that, when you flip that around and say, "Oh my God, someone said something to you. We have to do something." It totally changes the way you look at life now. At this point, now you go through life thinking like, no one should ever say anything to me, or like.
And then not only that, then it becomes worse because now you got people lying about what they said because they know that they can take
They can get
advantage
attention
of it.
from it. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they're hurt.
Erica Thomas.
Yeah. There was
I
just.
think it's okay to be upset when people say things to you that aren't correct or aren't right. You know, and I'm someone who's not, quote unquote triggered. Then it means that what they've said matters to you.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Like I can get angry when someone. This happened to me, like so many times last week. I bought a bike recently, so I've been like taking like evening like bike rides in my neighborhood, and the kinds of things people are saying to me outside of their car windows.
What?
Men. I'm just like. I'm appalled.
Yeah.
But I obviously I ignore them because.
Are you gonna hide in your house for the rest of your life and never have to experience it?
But it does make you uncomfortable.
It makes me uncomfortable. It makes me angry.
So I'm glad you mentioned that. What men are saying to you, because I wanted to ask you guys. I want to get onto this next topic, something that we talk about on this podcast a lot. This is a huge topic for us because we are very interested in the dynamics of dating and the dating.
I knew
women guests on here. You guys are only the second time we've had a woman guest. So like it's interesting to get that perspective on dating. We have a lot of opinions on it, and like we talk about it a lot. And I think to get y'all's perspective would be good. So, what has that been like for y'all?
Man, can I just say something real quick? I mean, we're shifting, but I just want to piggyback off of this real quick comment my sister made about getting upset when people say things that are rooted in hate or certainly not rooted in love. It's like, again, my personality is very, unfortunately, aggressive, and I'm not a very vulnerable or sensitive person. So really, nothing really gets to me. But I do see other people who are being hurt by words. And I do think that it's a two-edged sword. On one hand, we cannot let what people say about us affect us to the point where we become non-functional. On the other hand, we can't enable a culture where we just say it's okay to say whatever you want to say.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
if we're going to be on this end where we're like, toughen up, we have to hold people accountable.
Right.
And you know, I can think of so many times, and this is my personality. When people holler out the window and say stuff that's off the cuff, I will turn around and be like, "Did your mama teach you to talk to women that way?"
Mm-hmm.
It'll shut them up right away.
Yeah.
So that's my personality. Not everybody needs to do that. But what I'm trying to say is sometimes people don't realize what they're doing until you call them out on what they're doing.
But that's totally different than saying now.
That's community.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's my whole point.
Right,
Is that
right,
sometimes people
right.
need to know that what they're saying is hurtful.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's how communities
Because
work.
people
right?
won't do it.
It's
you know?
when
People won't do it.
when you
Yeah.
don't tolerate certain things, there's a difference between not tolerating it and just
Being victimized by it.
yes,
Totally.
you know what I
agree.
mean?
Totally
Yeah.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's
So dating.
So dating.
Wow, where do we even start?
Hey, you guys didn't mention this on the list.
There is no list. Everything's up for
Fair game.
conversation. Yeah, I mean, I don't date, guys. I haven't found. I'm not saying I don't date. What I mean to say, wow, I've been very articulate this whole tour.
All of a sudden, she's stumbling over her words.
No, I would like to say that I have my eyes open at all times, and I have a hard time. I shouldn't say I have a hard time. I have a hard time finding or seeing men who are men.
Right.
I see a lot of boys, and I just have no time to waste. Like,
Right.
and it sounds wrong and cruel. Maybe not wrong. I don't know.
What do you
That's not
attribute that to, though? Like the fact that there's no men.
don't say there's no. They're just hard to find.
No, they exist. But I'm saying, like, for her to say that she hasn't seen many,
Yeah.
that's a problem.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
absolutely.
So what do you
Yeah.
attribute that to? Is it something in like is it cultural, societal, like?
I don't know. It's so many things. It's math first and foremost, because I think it's like a 1 to 3 right now. It feels to me like that. It feels to
The
me
ratio.
like in any space, it's a 1 to 3 ratio.
Wow.
You know? Anywhere I go, I went dancing with a friend last night. Like all women. You know, unless
Well,
you
we're
came
1 to
with your
1
date.
here, so
Yeah, it's true. But it's I don't find myself in spaces where, you know, mathematically speaking, there are enough men, but that's not the real problem. Like, that's just a logistical issue. I think the real problem is that I'm not finding men who are mature and grown up, and you know are.
what does that mean to you, like mature and grown up?
Like know how to hold their own and are confident in who they are. I think the one thing that Peace and I talk about a lot is that we do have strong personalities. I'm a little bit quieter, but I do have a strong personality at times, and because of the nature of what I do, I'm on stage, I'm in front of people, and I feel very secure and confident in, you know, talking to large audiences and just being a very public person when it comes to music, although I'm an incredibly private person in general. And I find that for me, it's very important to find someone who's very comfortable with that and doesn't feel intimidated by that.
Right.
And that's very hard to find. And I think that there are a lot of guys out there who kind of go the ego trip route, where they're always trying to prove themselves. And I'm personally looking for someone in my life who is not trying to prove themselves, who knows who they are, who's confident, who knows the Lord deeply, and walks out of that confidence and not out of, you know, trying to reflect back to people what they want to see. And that's very hard to find. That's been very hard to find in my life. I'm someone who also loves being single. It doesn't mean that I'm not always looking, but I found that in general, I'm not one of those people who is, you know, always like, oh, I just want to be in a relationship. That's quality. That's when I'm like, oh, I hate being single. I hate being single. So, you know, that's kind of my thing.
Yeah, she said it best. She really covered it.
You just trying to get out of speaking your piece on this.
No, I mean, really, she did say it best.
Your piece.
You know, there is something to be said about. Okay, so if we're really gonna go there,
Yeah, let's really go there.
we're really gonna go there. Not only is the ratio slightly skewed for female to men ratio of, you know, single and available people in the country, But if we look at race, we see that black females are at, if you have a totem pole of desirable and pursuable, black females tend to be at the black female, subset, that we're difficult, we're strong-willed, and and unfortunately, people buy into a lot of those stereotypes, and they think that, it's a lot of work to pursue a black woman, and I'm just not going to put that work in there. So unfortunately, we do end up kind of being the most single demographic in our country, and that's just the way it is.
It is. True.
And that doesn't limit anything, because that limits some things. But what I'm saying is that if, as a black female, if you're open to finding love and open to anyone, that's not going to completely wall you off from meeting somebody.
Right.
But personally speaking, I joke about this a little bit, but I bought a house about 1 year and 8 months ago, and I joked to my girlfriends, I'm like, the minute I bought a house, I was off the market. Because, it's that thing of like, generally speaking, and I really respect men, and I'm not one of those people who buys into the feminist movement at all. I love my brothers. I love the role that God has given them in this world. So because of that, I don't really buy into that independent woman thing. I am an independent woman, but that's just because that's who I am.
Right.
But I say that me being a homeowner, as well as like an educated woman and pursued a higher level education, and it just kind of presents more of a challenge.
Right.
And unfortunately, what I have found is that a lot of guys are not up for that challenge.
Finding someone on your level.
Yeah, and I don't mean to judge people, because have I been pursued? I definitely have, by some wonderful guys. And it just didn't work out because it wasn't the right person for me, and I wasn't the right person for them. And that's how it works out. But I have found that my situation makes me less of a damsel in distress to be rescued.
Right.
And unfortunately, that a lot of times guys want to find a damsel in distress.
That's not the guy you want to be with anyway.
And exactly,
Right.
it isn't. Not to mention that what she said, we're on stage a lot, we're in front of crowds a lot, and I think people just don't know what to do with that sometimes. So that's a real challenge. Now, all that aside, there are some really great men that I've come across, and I think that there's a lot of things that we would really need a lot of time to hash out, but that have to do with our upbringing, our culture, expectations from our Nigerian family, from our identity things. There's a lot
It's like
that
there's
goes.
so many layers.
It's a very layered thing with us being single Nigerian, American, black females who are Christian in America. All right.
Right. It's hilarious because it's almost identical to my wife's sister. She has two sisters younger than her, and they're both single. They've been single for the longest time, both well into their 30s, and it's like they have the same problems. It's like the expectations of the family, certain type of men. They both have careers, and it's like they both are independent, and finding someone that meets those values, but also, isn't intimidated by someone who can fend for themselves in a sense, or isn't a damsel in distress, like you said. It's like, it's not that easy.
Yeah.
And I wish there was more men. We need to do it. No, I'm serious. We need. I don't mean like numbers wise. I mean like mentality wise. Like we need to do a better job of raising men. And I think that's part of the problem, is that we're not doing a good job of raising men. We're raising grown boys.
You have sayings like "happy wife, happy life."
Yeah.
How are you gonna?
Yeah.
And if we're going to touch on how the Christian aspect relates to this, unfortunately, like you said, the church has done a very bad job of raising men. And we haven't, as a church, we haven't taught men how to, date in a healthy manner. I grew up, most of my church experiences, youth group experiences, young adult ministry were like guys who were very socially awkward around women.
Right.
Because the church just taught you don't have sex.
Right.
They didn't teach you anything else.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't want to touch her. I might have sex with her. So I'm just like, hi to you too.
Yeah. Right.
It was just weird.
It's funny because that's what you see the men afraid to be men. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They don't know how to act. They don't know how to be just normal and honest because they're like, oh, I gotta, you know, I can't do anything. Oh, if I look at a woman,
I know.
you know,
I've
like,
It's just too much. I mean, honestly, it's almost like dating outside of the church is just a lot easier. But unfortunately, you know, there are things that are important to me and to my sister, and those are things I'm not willing to compromise on. So now you're trying to match up a guy who is grown and mature, knows what he wants, knows how to pursue women, with a guy who has strong, not just values, but like strongly, like she said, pursues this relationship with God and makes a priority. And those two together, very far and few between.
Do you guys care about like race or anything?
Ooh, he went there.
Oh man, no, I really just want to be with someone who's cultured, like someone who loves to travel, has a love for the world, and has a love for learning about other cultures. You know, more than, and not just someone who can feel comfortable in a space where, you know, he's with, you know, for example, my whole family, you know, and we're very Nigerian, you know. You know, you go home, you don't, you know, it's just so other. And I want someone who is so comfortable in himself that he can be comfortable in that space and, you know, be okay with the things that he doesn't know and keep this, leave the space there to learn those things and feel free in that space. But just as much, like, I just love traveling. That's something that we started doing a couple years ago. We were just like, every year we're going to go out of the country and go somewhere because we never did that. You know, as kids, the only time we traveled was for, you know, missions trips with youth groups, and I did some like chaperoning for high school students when I was a young adult, or when I was in my 20s, and so it's like a couple years ago I was like, I just want to go places and I want to see other people and learn other things, and I've realized that is so important to me, that someone else who has that same love and same passion is someone that I want to be with.
When I want to say that race has been a very big part of our lives for many of the reasons that we spoke about earlier in this interview. And I'm grateful again that my outlook on the world is very unique because I grew up first generation and because I always was that oddball. Growing up, our friend circle looked like I was friends with the Asian girl, the Indian girl, and the guy from, you know, like the exchange student.
Right.
Because those are the people I could relate to because they were in the middle somewhere.
Right.
And so as I began even dating in college, my dating life looked like that.
Right.
The guy from Asia, the guy
Right.
from Italy, the guy from... And so somehow I've always ended up dating, like my sister said, cultured people, but not just people who are cultured, people who have experience,
Right.
who are experienced with culture, first generation this, first generation that. And although that seems to work out best because there's just a mutual understanding of how the world works, there's an openness to any other culture.
Right.
Now, our upbringing, which was very complicated, which was this difficulty assimilating to Black American culture, made it very difficult in the dating world to navigate in that area. And I could go on and on, but I think you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It was just hard to like
I was gonna ask you, like,
fit in.
to identify or like.
Yes, like,
Yeah.
you know, I struggled with this. I was never Black enough. I was never Black enough, specifically with the kids growing up. And then in college, when I started dating and I dated Black guys, it was just about myself. And I realized that, oh my gosh, I don't feel comfortable or safe. I don't feel safe in these relationships. And honestly, I realized even like maybe 4 years ago, I went through some counseling, some inner healing counseling a church friend set me up with. And I realized that there were still major wounds that had been inflicted as a child from the Black community that I had been carrying my whole life,
Right.
that infiltrated into my dating life, infiltrated into my friendships. And God had to really like heal that stuff within me. And I can say now that like He's really healed it. And I have wonderful friends from all races, Black, white, this, that. But there are some things in those formative years that will still linger. And I would say now that I am most myself when dating people who have experienced culture.
Right.
And I'm not even saying white, Black. I'm just like experienced culture.
Yeah, anyone who's
outside
not
of this country.
who's not stuck in their own
Yes.
like.
If you are a Black American and you think my food is weird,
Right.
this isn't gonna work.
Yeah.
If you're white and you can't eat the food my mom cooks, this isn't gonna work. So it's not about race; it's
Yeah.
about culture.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's that whole thing about race just being like this myth. It doesn't exist. Race
Yeah.
doesn't exist, and it doesn't. You know, because there are so many shades of any kind of brown and so many shades of any kind of tan and white or whatever. And we spend so much time talking about race when race isn't real.
Right.
When people's
I agree
cultures
with you.
are real.
Yes,
you know?
culture.
100%.
Yeah. We always talk about it's not about race. It's definitely about culture because it's
Absolutely.
just that's what separates people.
Yeah.
Because they don't get your culture, you know.
Absolutely.
But they make it a race thing.
They do.
You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, you have people from black people. Well, you guys are from Nigeria, but you have black people from Jamaica, you know, Trinidad, and they're not like the African Americans or black people from America, you know, whatever you want to call them. And even you have Southern blacks, you have Northern, like it's all different, and it doesn't matter, you know. So because I get annoyed with that when people are like black people, you know, like when people say you should only like black women, you should only date black men because you know if you're not, you're disrespecting black men. Like just that mentality.
Yeah.
It's stupid.
Yeah, you can miss it.
Black men, if you don't date black women, you hate your mother.
And I always say something.
Yes, I've heard
Yeah.
I've heard it.
Sometimes, like, because I have friends sometimes on Facebook or whatever that will say stuff like that. I'm like, what about me? Like, because I don't think
how do we fit
not
into
to
that
mean
narrative?
like
Like-
date me, but I'm saying like if I was one of those people, like you're my friend, but yet now you're just excluding me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think you thought this all the way through. You know. And then like, oh no, you're different. What does that mean? Yeah. So yeah, I don't think people they get caught up in their own stuff and they can't look
tribal.
past it a lot of times.
Yeah.
Tribal. Yeah.
True.
Right, and it's the world is so much more dynamic than that, you know. And I don't think you can break anything down into tribes in that way.
I mean, even if you look at church, like white church, black church,
gosh.
Nigerian church,
Yeah.
Korean church.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you have.
Puerto Rican church.
I don't want any of that. I just want people that love God and, you know, let's get together. You know what I mean? And the fact that people can't see that, you know, like it's funny because this church I used to go to, the guy who was the pastor, he used to say, you know, I got all kinds of people. It was mostly black. There's all kinds of people here. And I'm a half black, half white. Remember he used to always say that?
Yeah.
Dude, you act black.
Yeah.
Like you're pandering to
Yeah.
and I don't even like saying you act black, but I mean black culture. Like he's pandering to that.
Right.
You know, he was pandering to that and
He has all the isms of the black, you know what I mean? Like
Totally.
the black preacher.
instead of just being real, like just talk.
Just be real.
Just
be real.
be honest, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that goes a lot further with every culture.
Absolutely.
You know, if you're just honest, like I love culture.
Yes.
I love just asking questions. And sometimes people are like, whoa, you know, it's not because I'm.
When we travel, we want to go. We want to see where the people are. We want to like eat the food. We want to, you know,
Absolutely.
we want
I
to
love
experience
that.
everything. Yeah.
I say my
brings up-
two. Go ahead.
I was gonna say this brings up this whole nother thought about what it like you know, political correctness in the sense that when people ask you questions about race, to be like, this person's asking me a question
Because they don't know.
Yeah.
because they don't know,
Right.
You know, I'm gonna.
Yeah.
And even the idea of political correctness, it only works in the culture that you're in, because everyone has their own idea of what's politically correct. We talk about that all the time. Simone's mom will see us and she'll be like, "You fat," you know what I mean? Like
that's totally
you,
Nigerian.
You know what I'm
culture, by
saying?
the way.
Like foreigners do that all the time.
Absolutely.
They don't have a filter
up
because
blunt.
it's not about politically
Right.
correct.
Yeah.
Everyone into this box of your idea of what society
Oh,
is.
man. Yeah.
It doesn't work.
It does not work.
Yeah. And God loves culture. You know,
Yes,
He loves the differences in us, and that's why He talks about the nations. You know, So
Yeah.
people we have different cultures, and He can use that. Like, well, we And if we have to come together with people genuinely, you know what I mean? And culture is an amazing thing where you can learn. And
absolutely.
food,
Yes.
you know, just
Oh, that's my favorite.
trying different foods and
Because I'm fat.
Honestly, one of my biggest pet peeves when I interact with people is that you guys have heard of people say, "Oh, I don't see color."
Yeah.
What do you mean you don't see color?
Stop.
I'm just like, okay, right off the bat, we can't hang because I want you to see my color and I want you to see my culture. And I want you to embrace it. You know what I mean? As much as we've dated culture outside of our culture, I'm going to use that word specifically. One thing I'm sorry.
I feel like that's not being real anyway.
It's not.
Like, you're totally faking.
It's not. It's the easy way out.
Right.
You know.
we're definitely different.
Yeah.
And you gotta respect those differences, but also you gotta, if you're genuine, you want to know about those differences.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And if you're genuine, you can point out those differences and not worry about it offending somebody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
and if it does offend you, that's your problem.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
True.
we do that all the time. We talk about different races and cultures, if you will, and point out like the things that are
the funny
things about
like
them.
how racist
How racist
Asians are.
The whole podcast of how racist Asians are.
And they don't even know. Like, it's
They
funny.
don't.
No, they know. Asians know, but
They make
I mean,
commercials.
they don't realize that it's like a bad thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we pointed out because it's like in this country, it's like black and white.
Yeah.
There's this race war between, but like my brother-in-law will come on a lot of times and he'll talk about his experience in Trinidad and when he was growing up, because he's half Indian, half black. And in that country, there's a huge dynamic between the blacks and the Indians where they don't get along.
Wow.
And so he experienced racism from his black grandmother, who totally didn't want to have anything to do with them because their father married an Indian woman. You know what I mean? So his experience was never the black and white thing. It was always, him being half Indian was a problem, So he talks about that dynamic, and we talk about
because the Indians were like the lesser class in Trinidad.
the Indians were the blacks were brought there as slaves from Africa, but then they were given land after they got there, and so they looked at them as a lower class,
Right.
You know, and but people don't talk about those dynamics. It's like in this country, you're led to believe that it's like it's only black and it's only white, and black people can't be racist.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, people need to understand the difference between systematic racism and racist
behavior,
and thoughts.
Yeah. There's a total difference.
Yeah.
But so we like to point out that stuff. We joke about it all the time because, I literally call him half black, half Indian with the Spanish last name because his last name's Garcia, and he's like his heritage is so like crazy from the Spanish conquering it and being half Indian, half black. But it's like it's to shed light on how stupid that identity is that you have to identify in your race. You know what I mean? And
and this brings to point to this idea of identity. I think where we're faltering as a nation and other parts of the world too is this idea that we need to cling to an identity.
Yeah.
So people make their identity that they are black,
right,
and respect my blackness. And when I walk in a room, I want you to acknowledge me. Or woman, I am a woman.
Right.
Don't disrespect me. This is my identity. Or whether it is your sexual identity. I am gay. This is my identity. I need you to affirm me.
Right.
Anytime you place your identity in this area, which is really just an attribute. It's one way that you might express yourself. It's not who you are.
It's a small piece.
Because the only identity that we should be claiming is that we're children of God.
Right.
He's the only person that can affirm us in the way that is who we were meant to be. You know what I mean? Like, other than that, we can express ourselves in any other way. And if someone challenges that, that's not the end of our world because that's not who we are.
Right.
It's just an expression of who we are.
But that shows people. That shows where you're at. That shows that you need help. That shows that you need him, because if you need that identity, if you're clinging to that identity, well then you're lacking him. You know what I mean? And you need more of him.
When someone attacks your identity, then how fragile is your identity then?
Right.
Like, it's so fragile.
But again, if we set up this system where you gain power based off of how many identity points you can rack up. So now
Yeah.
if you're a gay black woman
Yes.
who is also disabled,
Right.
my words matter more than anyone else. I get to speak
Absolutely.
on
If you're a
everything.
white-
You play that game when you rack up this hierarchy of points where it's like, who gets I've literally seen them like go through who wins the battle of the identity thing, like especially with politicians, where I saw like I think it was Rashida Tlaib and one of the black congresswomen going back and forth about something, and then they were like, well, who wins that, because one of them is brown, one of them's black, but they're both women. But then so they like literally broke it down. You know what I mean? By like, and then one of them came out on top. I don't remember why, but I was just like, this is the most ridiculous thing I have ever seen.
And like very subtle, but also one of these very subtle, dangerous ideas. Because like, what if somebody is like, a woman and black and disabled and all of the things, and then also like a latent serial killer, and they're out here saying any and every.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yep, it's true.
Yeah, because you already judgment made. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You fit the image that I serve,
Yeah.
which is kind of funny.
Dangerous.
All right. Well, thank you guys. I think that was a good conversation. I'm really glad we did this.
That was awesome.
It's that time already?
11:20.
Wow, time flew.
Well, we started mad. Rachel can point everyone to their websites. That's joyike.com, right?
Yes.
And then we're wearing a nice piece of Joy's merch right there. You can get her merch. You are not your fear. I love that.
I'm not your fear.
Hey.
Yeah. No, her music is dope.
It's dope.
We play it.
Yo, I'm
we
on
listen
some
to it.
assurance.
We listen to it all the time. She has
I'm
no
on some
idea.
assurance. Like, that's one of my
She
favorites.
has no idea.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
But yeah, there's a lot of. She's got a lot
Hopefully
of
we
good
can
ones.
do a show together soon again.
Yes. Always.
Yeah.
Yeah, let us know. Let us know when you're doing another thing at the gathering place. We'll come
sure,
through. We can, even if we just come through and do a couple of songs, it's no big deal.
You guys gotta come out to our open.
And yeah, so we appreciate you guys. Also for us, make sure you guys stay tuned. We want to thank everybody, first of all, who came out to the Fillmore, because that show was amazing with Switchfoot. Thank you to Jesse at 104.5 for hooking that up. We really appreciate you. And listen on Sunday night. She's been banging gold every Sunday night on the new music show. So stay tuned for that on 104.5 FM in Philly. And also August 31st, we're doing a big show at the Auburn Road Winery. It's going to be our 20-year anniversary. We've been singing together for 20 years, which we didn't even think about it. We've been singing together since we were 5 years old, and we've been singing together for 20 years. And I remember, like, it just came to me. I'm like, yo, our first show was in 1999.
Yeah.
Man, oh man.
We sang "If I Ever Fall in Love" by Shy.
Wow.
The most cliche song.
Y'all don't know nothing about that. All acapella. Yeah. Yeah.
So funny.
But yeah, make sure you come out. Make sure you get your reservations now, because they already told us that it's pretty much sold out. So get
What?
your reservation.
I put it on my calendar yesterday. I better get that ticket.
Well, you can still come, but you won't be able to get a table. So you can still come.
Yeah, it's outside, so you can get like a blanket.
Yeah,
They
you can still come.
They have pizza. They do wine.
Yeah, it's an
Sweet
outdoor
wine
thing.
too.
Yeah, they have nice sweet wines. Get the Blessington. You'll do it like
She
that.
act like she don't like wine.
Yeah.
I can make both.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make that.
August 31st, guys. It's
What
Labor
time
Day
is
weekend.
it?
It starts at 7 p.m.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So we're gonna be doing about 90 minutes, and it's
And
gonna
maybe if you guys come, might be able to do a little something.
Yeah, that would be crazy. What?
That'd be great.
That would be. We got secrets in the works.
I love it.
But thank you guys very much. Also, make sure if you want to support the podcast and keep helping us grow so we don't keep having technical issues like we always do, you can go to our Patreon, patreon.com/YoungLionTV. You can become a member. and it's only like $5 a month, and you get access to a lot of behind the scenes stuff, a lot of extra footage,
All our
extra
music.
content, all of our music, all of our future music coming out. You'll get for free, and it's only $5 a month. And if you want to just donate, you can do that too. All of that will be going to building up the podcast, getting better stuff. We're trying to get new lenses, all that good stuff. So we appreciate you guys. We love you. Make sure you come back next week. Check us out. And we're out of here. Peace.
Peace.
Young lion go live, yeah. Young lion you rich, yeah.